Since we met in January this year, we have made concrete progress towards strengthening debt advice services in the European Union.
I'm really looking at how we as debt advisors can look after the mental well-being and emotional well-being of the clients we work with.
Mediation means contacting the beneficiary creditors, proposing to them to reorganize their debt.
We want to prepare the consumers and empower the consumer so that he can overcome the bad financial situation.
As a government, it's very important that we help the people who can't do it by themselves.
The voluntary solutions in Ireland are an alternative to insolvency for debtors who do not wish to engage in insolvency solutions.
We are funded by the creditors who pay for dealing with their clients in financial precarity.
Debt advice is far behind the technical possibilities used by the financial sector, and therefore debt advice should be really trained for the future.
The Code of Conduct establishes several rules, exactly 10 articles in fact, to support and manage the relationship between professionals and consumers.
The MAP helpline is a key service offered by the Money Advice and Budgeting Service in Ireland. Since its inception, it has serviced over 300,000 calls.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning. My name is Willem-Pieter de Groen, and I would like to welcome you on behalf of project partners SEPS and VVA, as well as the European Commission, which initiated and commissioned this initiative, to the second seminar series on good practices in debt advice. Today, we'll have again 3 new good practices presented and discussed during the breakout sessions. But before we move to the first presentation of a good practice on emotional debt advice for debtors, we first will have the welcome remarks by Didier Reynders, European Commissioner for Justice.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this second series of workshops on debt advice. Since we met in January this year, we have made concrete progress towards strengthening debt advice services in the European Union. First, there is more interest than we imagined in debt advice. We had double the number of participants in all capacity building events than initially foreseen. These events brought experts from countries where debt advice works well, mainly in Northwest Europe, to share their good experiences with those from countries where debt advice is less well developed. These discussions have also underlined the areas that people are most interested in. For example, there is a lot of support for the ethical principles of debt advice, namely that debt advice contributes to a better quality of life. Second, as I announced in January, the Commission has now published a call for grants to support a more stable availability of debt advice services. We are now finalizing our evaluation of the proposals. Third, the Commission has also proposed important legislative changes to the Consumer Credit Directive. These changes will improve many aspects of debt advice in the European Union. We have proposed the establishment of a duty for member states to ensure the availability of debt advice services. In some member states, the services are already well available, but this is not the case in other countries. We have also proposed a clear definition of what debt advice is, namely, that debt advice is in favor of the debtor. We have as well introduced in our legislative proposal a cap on interest rates, more stringent rules for assessments of creditworthiness, and measures to improve the financial literacy of consumers in line with the positive experience of similar provisions in the Mortgage Credit Directive. We have finally included in our proposal an explanation of why debt advice is a fundamental tool for consumer protection. Fourth, we have been making and are going to make further big efforts to research the problem of over-indebtedness in the European Union. This year, we will launch a new study into over-indebtedness. This will include a legal analysis, roundtables with consumers to listen to their voices, and an analysis of the impact of pandemic. The study will give us a more precise mapping of the debt situation across the European Union. But the present exchanges with you are just as important to me for our understanding of the situation. I greatly value your input, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. I'm confident that our initiatives, both the current ones and those that are going to start, will bring important improvements for European citizens, and in particular, for the most vulnerable citizens. Once again, many thanks for taking the time to be online with us today.
So after the welcome remarks by Commissioner DJ Reinders, we now move to the first presentation of good practice. And for that, we've moved now to the United Kingdom, from where Katie Wade of the Money Advice Trust will present the good practice of the emotional advice for debtors. Katie, the floor is yours.
Oh, hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me along to speak today about emotional support for people experiencing financial difficulties. So what I'm going to speak about today is just thinking about, we're looking at it from the point of view of looking after your own well-being as a debt advisor, as well as that of the client. So we're going to look at what can trigger a reaction when you're advising clients. We're also going to look at emotional intelligence. We're going to look at tools for dealing with challenging interactions. We're going to look at how to build your resilience as a debt advisor, working with clients who are thinking of self-harm, debriefing, and then finally taking care of yourself. So we're going to kind of do an overview of all of those things. Just to say, there is quite a lot of emotions you can probably gather from what we're looking at. There's a lot of emotional content today. So it's just to say to make sure that you do take care of yourself in the session as well. So yeah, if you need to sort of step away, if there's any particular issues we're talking about that are difficult, do step away or just take care of yourself. So looking first of all at what we mean by a trigger or a cause. So when you're speaking to a client, when you're advising them, you might find that there's something that a client says or something that they do, or they might speak in a certain way, and that can cause an emotional reaction in you as an advisor. Different things can cause those triggers. So it might be where somebody's telling you something that reminds you of an event that happened to you in the past. So for example, if somebody's talking about the fact that they've lost a loved one, that could trigger a reaction in you because it could be that you've experienced something the same. It could be someone saying something that reminds you of a feeling or an emotion that you've had in the past. yeah, so it could, sorry, I've got somebody knocking on my door and I'm trying to ignore it. It's a distraction. The joys of working from home, do apologise. Yes, it could be someone saying something that reminds you of a feeling or an emotion that you've had in the past. So again, that could be triggered with, that could be linked in with a bereavement, but it could be anything really that brings that emotion back. It could be someone speaking to you in a certain way. So for example, it could be someone that's shouting at you, perhaps they're getting angry, or it could be that they're getting upset. I used to have a colleague who found it really hard if a woman cried, that would always trigger him. I've also, when I've done this kind of training before, I've had people who might say that if it's an older man that cries, they find that hard. It could also be a client reminding you of someone who's been important to you in your life. So as I said, perhaps with the bereavement as an example. Just thinking about how you can deal with a reaction. I think sometimes it's good just to take a little bit of time to reflect on what that reaction's caused, and just think about how you might deal with it in the future, you know, how you might deal with that in the future. So you can acknowledge the triggers or the reactions so that you can be mindful about coping mechanisms. So perhaps if you've had an interview and it's triggered a particular reaction, you could maybe then spend a little bit of time thinking about it yourself or debriefing with somebody just to think about how you might deal with it differently next time. You can reminding yourself that it's not your responsibility to fix the situation. I think we all go into debt advice because we want to sort things out, we want to help people, but it's just remembering that it's not your role to kind of sort everything out. Your role as a debt advisor is to empower the client to deal with their problems. Taking deep breaths can really help. So if you're in that moment when you're speaking to somebody, just taking a deep breath, that can help sometimes. Recognizing how you're feeling and acknowledging what's been triggered. So trying not to push it aside. I think sometimes you can just push it down and ignore it without acknowledging it and dealing with it and trying to come up with a solution for it next time. Not really going to be addressing the problem. Observe the heightened emotion and allow time for it to pass. So just as I said to you at the beginning, looking after yourself, just take that moment. If you need to go and speak to someone about it or go and make yourself a cup of tea, you can tell I'm a true Brit. We have a cup of tea for everything. A cup of tea solves all problems. Have a cup of tea, you know, that kind of thing, but just make sure that you're looking after yourself. And finally, debriefing is really important. So speak to a colleague, speak to your manager, you know, just having that chance to kind of offload. Refocusing the conversation can really help sometimes as well, just to take that pressure off. Summarizing the important parts so far as a distraction. So if you've got somebody who perhaps is quite angry, if the emotion's quite heightened, sometimes if you're just summarizing the main points, that can just get them to refocus. Speaking in a calm voice and quiet, making sure that you're not doing it in a patronizing way, because obviously that can make people feel even angrier if they are in an angry state, but just trying to keep calm, reassure them, and that can sometimes just kind of reduce that emotion. Explaining what action you're going to take. So acknowledging the reaction that's happened, but then moving on to being quite practical about what's going to be, what needs to be done. Using bracketing, so popping your emotions in a box, so just parking them for 1 minute so that you can move forward with the client, with the issue and the interview. But remember to just go back to that, go back and revisit it so that it's not just kind of left there. And finally, maybe scribbling or doodling or playing with like a stress ball, something like that. That might be able to help you as well. Just thinking about emotional intelligence. So we've got 4 different circles there, which kind of, you know, they set out the different levels of emotional intelligence. So it's about perceiving and understanding emotions, managing those emotions, and then using those emotions to try and move things forward. And to be emotionally intelligent, if you're kind of doing all of those things, then you're more likely to be more emotionally intelligent. So it's about just kind of engaging and really being in touch with your emotions, but also the emotions of your client, you know, just in terms of moving things forward. So there's 10 essential points to emotional awareness or emotional intelligence. And it's really, so it's important to kind of think about these when you're interviewing a client, when you're speaking to a client. Just build, the more you do these, the more likely you are to kind of have that emotional awareness and just be aware of where your client's coming from, how they're feeling. So it's about listening, considering how your client's feeling. So every day as debt advisors, we're doing this job, and you kind of have a process that we follow, but it's just remembering that for each client, when they come to see you, this might be the first time that they've ever spoken to somebody about their situation. So just really considering how they're feeling. Consider your own feelings as well. So it's about making sure that you're looking after yourself. And as we talked about with the triggers, just being aware of those things that might trigger things for you. Showing empathy. So just showing the clients that, you know, you are empathizing with them. Even if it's a story that you've heard a lot of times before, you might have seen clients who are in a worse situation. But if for that client, they're in a, you know, they feel like this is a lot, even though the debts might be smaller, it's important to show that empathy. Building trust. The more you build trust, the more likely clients are to open up and tell you about their whole situation. Recognizing misunderstandings is really important as well. So if you have misunderstood something, or perhaps as a, you know, if you're dealing with a client ongoing, if perhaps something's gone wrong, it's important to acknowledge that, to admit that something's gone wrong, and then, you know, apologize if necessary, and then move forward. Pausing, just remembering to give the client time to kind of share their emotion, and feel that emotion. So not rushing to move on. Acknowledging your own thoughts, as we've talked about with the triggers, being authentic, come across as being genuine. So when you are talking about, you know, if somebody said, for example, I don't know, that they've had a relationship ending, or somebody's passed away, the way you say, you know, to acknowledge it and say, I'm really sorry to hear that, but make sure that you're doing it in a way that is authentic. And then finally, kind of ties in with the recognizing misunderstandings, not being afraid to apologize. So if you have done something wrong, you know, kind of just apologize for that, to move on. There's some tools there. So these are different tools that we've sort of identified just around working with clients in challenging situations. So this is thinking about those clients where perhaps they're very upset, or, you know, when you have those clients where you've advised them, you've listened to them, you've advised them, but they just want to keep telling you about the problem again and again, and they don't really want to move on, and you're finding it difficult to kind of move on. So I'm just going to briefly explain these different tools. So the first one is effect labeling. So it's kind of naming and identifying the issue, or the emotion that's happening. So if somebody is upset, just saying, I can hear you're upset. Would it help just to take a moment? Do you want to go and get a glass of water? So just labeling it sometimes. SARA, so you've got setting expectations, acknowledging, reflection and action. So that's the way, if a client keeps going over the same thing again and they're not moving forward, you can just explain what you can provide as a service, acknowledge what you've heard, reflect back on what you've heard to check your understanding, and then talk about how you're going to move forward. Freeze close questions is as it would suggest, just to clarify, just to get somebody to refocus, just asking very particular questions so that you can get the information you need. Recapping what we know, what we've done, and what we'll do next. Again, can be a good way of just getting a client to refocus and sort of move the interview forward. Pause, slow down, remove the heat. That's a really effective one if somebody is quite angry, if you've got somebody who's being quite angry. Just kind of allowing that time and for them to have a, you know, sort of have a rant, to have a moan, but then acknowledging that and then moving forward. And then the moving forward one is to say, you know, I hear, you know, I've heard all what you said, so moving forward, this is what we can do. So it's just kind of acknowledging that you need to move the interview forward. So that's just, yeah, just some tools that we can use. We've got these 3 pillars of resilience. So you've got accountability, agility and attitude. So it's just kind of thinking about looking after yourselves. You need to make sure that you're kind of using those three pillars there. Just got some tips here on building resilience. So finding, and I think it's all been tested. I think this last 18 months has been a real test for all of us in terms of building resilience, hasn't it, with COVID and the restrictions and how we've all had to be working quite differently, as well as our clients. So in terms of building resilience, find a silver lining. So resilient people tend to look for the beauty and the positives in a situation. So, you know, if you get up, like for me, working from home, sometimes I'll get up and it's a bit of a grey day and I'm thinking, oh, you know, wish the sun was out. But then I think I'm really lucky. I'm not having to get up really early, wait at a cold train station, do a really long journey. So it's just kind of trying to find the positive in something. Seeing something as a challenge and not as a threat. So as it says there, while it's a complex skill, according to research, part of resilience is it's about how you decide to respond to a situation. So you can't necessarily change the situation. What you can change is how you respond to it. So if you see something that you're anxious about, if you're feeling nervous about, just think, you know, I'm going to look at it as a positive. It's a learning curve. I was, as I'm sure the other speakers, presenters today might be feeling, I was feeling a little apprehensive this morning, but I was thinking, but also it's a really, really great opportunity to speak to other people, hear how, you know, other countries are doing things. So it's just kind of sort of changing it, just giving it that shift. Thinking about perspective. So people who are resilient focus on the tangible here and now issues rather than things that might never happen. This is one that I really have to work on myself. I think this is one that I find hardest. I always worry about what's going to happen. And this can be a really positive, a really important one, I think, for clients in debt who are in debt. So they may be really worrying about what might happen. So as a debt advisor, you can reassure them and you can tell them what the, you know, what the truths are, what's really going to happen, and really kind of get them to sort of, as it says at the end there, focusing on practical steps and like realistic daily goals. So just breaking that down for them. And then finally support, so sharing stories, so that with colleagues. So that again comes in with the debriefing as well. I'm not going to talk through all of this, but we've got 2 slides around working with clients who are thinking of self-harm or perhaps who are feeling suicidal. I believe these slides will be available to everybody after the session. I can see Willem nodding. Thanks, Willem. So this one is just, we've got 2, there's 2 different checklists, and these are both about, you know, how you can work through if you do have a client who's thinking, who you're concerned about, maybe thinking about self-harm or ending their lives. So you've got 3 scenarios. So you've got it where the client might hint at it. I don't know if it's the same in all countries, but certainly in England, we often get clients who just say, you know, I feel like I can't go on sometimes. I just feel like I want to end it. When you have a conversation with them, they don't mean that. But it's just really important to make sure you do have those conversations and just check in with them to make sure they're okay. Then you've got the scenario where the client tells you that they've actually thought about harming themselves or ending their lives. And then finally, where they've already done something. So you've just got the kind of the checklist there. And then the second slide there is just a risk assessment. So it's just, again, a checklist for what an advisor can do. We always say that advisors should alert somebody else. So it's not for them to be dealing with. They need to know what the process would be, who they need to tell. So it's the organisation supporting the client, not just the advisor, but it's just useful to have that checklist and just things to say. Just again about debriefing, which we've touched upon already, just to remember that it's really important to look after yourselves and debrief. It's a really important thing to do as an advisor. There's different ways you can do it depending on, you know, the kind of person you are. So you might have a debrief buddy, might be a colleague. Some people prefer to do it alone. So maybe just go off and just reflect on what's happened, maybe go for a walk or go for a run, or, you know, I keep saying have a cup of tea, maybe with your team or with your line manager. And it may be that there's different, you know, you debrief in different ways at different times as well, depending on the circumstances. We've just got there tips for getting the most in debrief. So share your experiences, reflect on how you felt and how you feel now. talk about anything that was difficult or challenging for you. And I think it's really important that you do make sure that you debrief after a difficult interview, because otherwise you're just going to be carrying that with you, which isn't good for you, and you're also carrying it into the next interview. Thinking about what you learned from the thing that you needed to debrief about. So as we talked about with the triggers, think about how could you have dealt with things differently? Was there anything else you could have done? And is there anything you need to do to make yourself feel okay afterwards? So yeah, just making sure that you do look after yourself. And then finally, we've just got a little slide there just about taking care of yourself. This came about because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and obviously all activities being cancelled, people needing to work from home. I don't know if any of you are still working from home. I am. But it's just making sure that you're looking after yourselves, but also defining that switch between work and home life is really important. Just clearing your head at the end of the day. So the idea is that you try to do something from at least 2 areas each day. So you've got mental things, so things like doing puzzles or playing chess or playing Scrabble, doing online learning, that kind of thing. Social, so connecting with friends or family, speaking on the phone, making sure you've got that outside kind of social connection, although obviously we can go out more now, thank goodness. Spiritual, so things like, you know, sitting in the sunshine, maybe going to like a local park or going in your garden, and then thinking about meditation, relaxation, prayer, you know, depending on what your thing is. Emotional, so doing something creative, so painting, knitting, listening to music, making music. And then finally physical, so you know, just making sure that you get some kind of exercise each day. So that's everything that I wanted to talk about. Just kind of a little overview. Hopefully that was useful, and we can discuss it more later when we have our breakout rooms.
Thank you very much, Katie, for giving this presentation. I can understand that many people want to discuss more with you about this case. So for that, we have an opportunity after the presentations. There is a focus group with Katie. And if you want to participate in that focus group, please indicate in the chat to our host, Bea. So if you select in the top list of names, you can select Bea Pozzo. And then just indicate to her that you want to participate in the first focus group. And you will all afterwards be automatically directed to the focus group with Katie, and actually also me, because I will be moderating that one. But before we go to the focus group, we first still have 2 interesting presentations. For the second presentation, we'll now move to France, where Elodie Aguilar of Crisis Foundation will present the good practice on amicable debt settlement in France. Elodie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, welcome to the presentation of the good practice of Crisis Foundation. We are a French NGO from Strasbourg, east of France. I am Elodie, and I have been a budget advisor for 8 years already. I'm waiting for, I think, the presentation.
Just continue. Bea will put the slides up.
Okay. So first, I will present the association, then our working environment, the call center, and finally, our good practice. So Crisis is 3 structures. Yeah, thank you. Yes. And yes, okay, great. Crisis is 3 structures. It's an ecosystem. The first NGO is Crisis Alsace, created in 1992 in Strasbourg. It was created to help border workers with their financial difficulties in the 1990s. We welcome beneficiaries face to face We help them in their steps to solve their financial difficulties, file of indebtedness with the Banque de France, social microcredit, budgetary support, etc. Then in 2004, Crésus spread throughout France and formed a federation. We have now 30 independent NGO in France and 492 volunteers. The federation also welcomed their beneficiaries face-to-face and has the same activities as Crésus Atlas. Finally, in 1998, the Crésus Foundation was created. It consists of a call center, the Dilemma service. Dilemma is an educational tool inspired by Monopoly to explain and talk about the budget in a playful way. Then an insurance center too. The insurance division proposes with our partner to reduce the cost of loan insurance for our beneficiaries. And an innovation center. We are working on Budget Manager app now. So the foundation.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, the foundation.
Just let me know if you want me to pass to the next slide.
Yes, thank you very much. The foundation was created with the aim of preventing over-indebtedness. This structure wants to help people not to fall in over-indebtedness. Can you just, Beatrice, sorry, can you back up? Yeah, great, thank you. So we have banking and financial institution partners who detect their clients and who put us in contact with them. We train our partners so that they can detect their clients as early as possible to avoid over-indebtedness. These beneficiaries arrive at the telephone platform where each of the 10 advisors deal with them. Okay, next. Let's focus now on the banking platform. So, next. Thank you. We work with banking and financial institutions such as BNP Paribas, Société Générale, etc. They detect their clients throughout France, explain our actions to them, and if the client accepts, he is transferred to the association via an information system. We have a first interview lasting about 1 hour in order to diagnose the situation. And depending on the situation, we direct the client toward an appropriate solution. In all cases, budget support is provided. If the situation allows it, we propose a credit reorganization called mediation. We also offer the review loan insurance. And finally, we take care of the SMEs. We have a specialist team to monitor and support them. Okay, you go next. Thank you. Let's go back to the financial diagnosis. In order to be effective and to have a global vision, we ask a certain number of questions. I don't know, the job they do, their personal situation, their resources, expensive credits, debts, how they're feeling, what are their futures projects that could change their situation, that financial situation, positive or negative. We have to listen and spend more more time with some people than with others. You go next. Thank you. We have no financial interest with regard to the beneficiary. We work for him and with him. Moreover, it is completely free for him. We help him in the process, but we do not do it for him. We are objective and do not judge his situation and his choices. This greatly facilitates the dialogue between us and the beneficiaries. The trust between us and the beneficiaries is important because we have to know the reality to propose the best solution for them. Thank you. The diagnosis is used to calculate the available money each month and to guide our beneficiary toward the most suitable solution. We calculate all the resources. We deduct the fixed charges. Fixed charges are all the contractual charges. For example, rent, telephoning, insurance, etc. And finally, we deduct the monthly credit payments. The result is this operation gives us the available money each month. This corresponds to food, clothing, health cost, petrol, etc. Let's look at the different categories of available money each month, called AMAIN. This is a range. It is adaptable case by case. I should point out the following figure correspond to the standard of living in France. Next, Beatrice, thank you. Category A correspond to an available money each month of for 400 euro for one person. We offer budgetary support and advice on how to improve their daily expenses. We study their bank statements in order to provide them with an objective analysis of their finance. We do a regular checkup to consolidate their budget. Here are some examples we can give. Monthly payment of expenses, so some charge are paid for a year, for example, taxes. Monthly payment is it is better to manage the budget. Change of direct debit dates based on the date of the payment of resources or setting up the precautionary savings. The second category. Thank you. The second category concerns the person with between 100 euro and 400 euro of aiming. We also studied the account statement. If the situation allows it, we set up a mediation. We reorganize their debt, but also the fixed and current charges. We will develop mediation later on. And finally, the last category, that correspond to the person with almost no available money each month. We suggest that they contact the Banque de France for people in overdebtedness. The Banque de France can freeze, reorganize, or erase all types of debt. For other situations, a judge can also freeze one or more credits. And finally, for the SMEs, can apply for liquidation. We follow them during all procedures until the situation is restored. Of course, we also provide budgetary support. Now, the good practice of Foundation Cresus, the mediation. Okay, after making the budget of the beneficiary, if the situation allows it, we propose to start a mediation. We contact all the creditors with proposal for reorganizations which enable the beneficiary to cope better. We propose 3 actions to them. Increase the duration of the loan by reducing the monthly payment. In order to make a mediation meaningful, we ask them to reduce the interest rates. For example, revolving loans with less than 3,000 euro outstanding capital have an interest rate of about 20%. By removing the reserve, we can get down to 5%. In general, the partners can rearrange for 7 years and or have the monthly payment. So let's go. Here are 2 examples of profiles. Thank you. The first concern a single person, employed and tenant. She earns 1,759 euro per month, has 1,085 in fixed charge and 701 in monthly credit payments. So she has no available money each month. Even if we opt a monthly credit payment, we would not be able to stabilize our situation. This person is overdrawn every month with significant charges from the bank. It is likely that she has overdue charges or credits. The Banque de France could help him to reorganize all his debts, credit, overdraft, and arrears. The second example corresponds to a married couple, 2 children. They are homeowners. They earn 3,532 euro, have 151 in expensive and 1,802 in credit. The aim is 579. In this case, we can generate about 650 income with the mediation. This gives us 1,230 to live on at the beginning for the month for this family. A second, thank you. Here is an example. Oh yes, you can. Thank you. Here an example of mediation with the before and after budget. By working on the expenses, the beneficiary managed to save 220 per month. The mediation also allowed them to save 664 per month. Our beneficiary has therefore 416 of a MAIM, which allows him to get bit by better. The advice after mediation is as follows: money savings, monthly payment of expenses to better manage budget, reduction of the overdraft, etc. We follow up our beneficiaries several months after the reorganization to consolidate the budget. Thanks to mediation, we avoid the feeling of an indebtedness file. We prevent unpaid bills and we establish contact between creditors and beneficiaries. Thank you. The keys to the successful mediation are based on each of the following items. Building a relationship of trust with our partners, but also with our beneficiary, is essential in our profession, which is with each of our partners, we have a privileged interlocutor, which allows to communicate better and to find the best solution for their clients and our beneficiaries. For this to work, we need motivated beneficiary that we do not judge. We are independent, as we said, which allows us to contact all the organizations without bias. Indeed, our existence does not depend on a single organization. The basis of our action is kindness towards our beneficiary or our partners. Thank you. Thank you very much for your participating in this presentation.
Thank you very much, Elodie, for explaining how the amicable debt settlement works in France. If you're very interested to discuss more on this particular good practice with Elodie, but also with her colleague Pauline, please indicate then to Bea in the chat that you would like to participate in the second focus group. I can imagine there's still quite a few things to be discussed later on. But now we will move to the third good practice presentation of today. That is given by Ana Passos from DECO, who is based in Portugal. Ana will explain to us how DECO functions as an organization that is primarily aimed at consumers. Ana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Willem. Good morning, everybody. A warm greetings from Portugal to everyone who is present in this seminar. And on behalf of DECO, I would like to thank CEPS and VVA for inviting us and giving us the pleasure to be here and to exchange some of our experience in DECO Association and share also some insights we gathered in our work in DECO and regarding mainly debt advice and how we do our daily work here in Portugal. So I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation that I will share with you. Please let me know if you are receiving it well so that you can share. Okay, is it okay? Not yet.
Now it is. Please go ahead.
Okay, are you receiving it well?
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So I'll talk about a little bit about our history and what is our expertise as a consumer association in what concerns debt advice, the scope of action of our activity in the financial sector and the financial support sector, and also some facts and figures. Some of our history. What's DECO, are you asking me? DECO is the biggest Portuguese association for consumer protection. We have been founded 48 years ago. We have a large experience in supporting consumers in different areas. We are a non-profit association, a private one, considered of public utility by the Minister of Justice in 2009, also recognized by the Minister of Justice to support over-indebted consumers. We have more than 370,000 associated members. We have been founded in 1974, just before the revolution in Portugal, supporting vulnerable consumers and providing them for financial advice. In the year 2000, pushed by the need of the consumers that wanted help, because in Portugal in that time, in the late 90s, we had an important growth of supply of credit, and so became over-indebtedness, became representing more and more, increasing more and more. And so consumers that were associated members from our association pushed us to create officially what it was created. It was in the field developed before, but in the year 2000, we created formally the Financial Advisory Office. Then it was called Over-Indebtedness Support Office, to help consumers that were facing and to overcome over-indebtedness, and with a specialized service, face-to-face service all over the country or Portugal, and to protect consumers' rights and in respect of our personal data and also their economic interests. And in 2012, we created an online platform, which we think it's a very important tool to contact with consumers, because it helps them to break down some barriers, because they have some consumers have shame in asking for advice, and this platform came to help us in helping the consumers to get to us and asking for advice to overcome over-indebtedness. So this platform is an important tool for us for the first contact with the consumer, and also provide some information on financial literacy. And we think it's a very important vehicle. And in this platform, the consumer can ask for support, and not only that, but can monitor all the process of supporting. Our headquarters are in Lisbon. As you see, this is the map of Portugal. Our headquarters are here in Lisbon. In red, all the delegations. We have delegations all around the country, from north to south Portugal, Algarve, Madeira. And we also have, that are here in white, a network of partners, which we think it's very important for us, a stakeholders network, that is to say, from the public or the private sector, for instance, city councils, companies, social institutions, other institutions. So we are where the consumer needs us, and we have a lot of partners, a lot of stakeholders that helped us in this task. DECO created this network so to be near the consumer, where the consumer needs us, and ensure that no one is excluded. In what concerns debt advice, DECO supports the consumers in the recovery of over-indebtedness, and helping them to draw a payment plan to negotiate with creditors. And what we think is our value added, DECO value added. DECO, as a team of high qualified and multidisciplinary professionals with skills and expertise to give quality advice, we comply with a lot of principles that we think it's very important on our daily work, such as ethics, independence, confidentiality, lawfulness, and to give the support consumers need. We offer a customized solution. Each consumer is a case, each family, each household is a case, and the solution is for them, for the household. And we respect also creditors and respect the personal data, because we deal with very important data for them and personal data, and we respect those data and the creditors also. But one important thing that in debt advice we consider it being very important is the commitment and the involvement of the consumer. Because if he's not involved in the solution in the field cannot be successful. And of course, it's very important that when the risk of default or in a pre-arrears credit for a pre-arrears credit agreement, it's very important to act early. So we try to inform the consumer so that if he is at risk of default, he asks for advice. But as you know, sometimes consumers don't realize the situation, the financial situation they have, and they get a credit to pay another credit and so on, and they enter in a spiral of over-indebtedness, which is very difficult afterwards to get a solution. So they must ask for advice as early as possible. It's very important so that they can get an healthy budget and a balanced budget. And the idea is that they have some savings also and a suitable effort rate, but sometimes that's not possible. But early intervention is crucial here. So this is our main areas of developing our work in DECO. First, we intend to our aim is to empower consumer. How do we do that? First of all, prevention. Prevention is a very important key and a very important issue in this matter. It's the best solution for over-indebtedness for us is prevention. So we deal a lot with prevention, with financial literacy to empower consumer not to be over-indebted. And we also give financial advice and the financial guidance so that to empower consumer to avoid over-indebtedness. So these three areas of intervention that we have here in DECO are education and trainings. So one more time, prevention, over-indebtedness support, and financial guidance and our financial advice. So we think, as I said before, prevention is a very important issue. So to prevent over-indebtedness, it's very important to educate and train consumers. We focus also on that and to fight misinformation, but because sometimes consumers get some loans without knowing without knowing the consequence of their acts. So we also fight misinformation and aim to reduce the imbalance between debtors and creditors and get a suitable solution, a suitable payment plan to help consumers to, if they are over-indebted or at risk of default, to overcome the situation. So this is very important, prevention. We promote financial education, training on financial literacy, and intend to give them to mostly to vulnerable consumers and empower them with information so that they can choose and make the sustainable choices and behave well. This is an example of one of our courses to households in Lisbon, for instance, Rock the House. We do courses and training and education at school, since elementary schools to university, high schools, senior universities for the youngest and for the elderly, and preventing also fraud in elderly consumers. We also empower our partners, the network of our partners, doing also some training to them, and so that they can help also consumers, that they can help us to help consumers, and so that consumers can manage their finances and overcome crises if that's the case. We also publish some guides. For instance, this is one guide that is when buying a house, what the consumer must do. This is only an example of informative guides that we publish, so to help consumers also in the prevention area. In what concerns over-indebtedness support, what are our scope of action? What do we do? So in DECO, first of all, we analyze, we make a diagnosis of the situation and provide for a suitable financial solution. We contact creditors in order to establish an agreement with them so that we can adjust the credit installments to the budget of the household, to the budget of the family, to the income of the family. So we think in that way we can contribute to the financial inclusion, because if a consumer is financially excluded, he is also socially excluded, and so we help him or her, help the consumer to overcome the situation. Our intervention is extrajudicial, that's to say, before a real agreement and before creditors go to court. We support the main causes of over-indebtedness are, first of all, unemployment, loss of income, but also divorce, accident, ills, and what debts do we in what debts do we include in the plan we design? Debts according to loans granted by credit institution or other creditors, and also debts from utilities such as electricity, telecommunications, etc. We don't deal with tax or social security debts. We give sometimes consumer cannot do a budget, doesn't know the real financial situation is in. So we give them an important tool. For us, it's an important tool. It's the budget, and we help them how to do a budget, the current budget, the ideal budget after overcoming over-indebtedness. And sometimes some consumers are astonished when they see their real financial situation. So doing a budget is very important, and we help them to do that. So what is our main aim? Our main goal is the consumer rehabilitation, and we work in this field. First of all, information to the consumer, then diagnosis, financial diagnosis, help them to deal with the budget and to do a budget, debt advice, contact with creditors, interventions to creditors, so that we can draw a payment plan, and to the rehabilitation of the consumer and the empowerment of the consumer. So that you can see how we work in the field. Here are some facts from the last year. We have helped more than 30,000 consumers that have debt problems, mostly because of unemployment and loss of income. They had average 5 credit liabilities and 37% in default credits. But as you know, we had some still in the field, some moratoriums that mitigate some of the impact of the ongoing pandemic. And if not so, perhaps the default credits were even worse. So the main causes of over-indebtedness, as I told you, unemployment and the loss of income. And those consumers we helped at an effort rate of 79%. That's to say 79% of their income went to pay credits, which is a lot. So what we do is to establish bridges between debitors and creditors. And just some final remarks that I would to share with you. Of course, we live in a pandemic. It's not over, the COVID-19 pandemic, and we can have in the future other crises with significant impact on personal finances and on family budgets. So we all have huge challenge towards the financial health of families, and we don't know if we can be in the future a vulnerable consumer, a vulnerable household, a vulnerable family, because depending on the characteristics or the circumstances, we can all be financially vulnerable, and we must prepare to not to become over-indebted, and to overcome new crises that can appear. So for us, the consumers are called to action, and with them, the consumers, the entities that give debt advice to face over-indebtedness, to empower the consumer, because acting alone, sometimes they don't are successful, and without savings and with budget management habits, they can not be prepared to overcome this crisis. So DECO thinks that to build a better future for consumers, DECO believes debt advice can help them and can promote a brighter and resilient future for them, for families, and facilitate them to become better prepared, to get them empowered to face adversities and contribute to generate also value for society. This is our contact in Lisbon. If you want more information, I'm willing to help you and to talk with you in the focus group. But if you can afterwards want to contact us, please do. We are available for that. Thank you very much for your attention. And the floor is yours, Peter.
Thank you very much, Anna, for this excellent presentation. And I saw also in the chat already many people indicating that they wanted to participate in your focus group, as well as for the other two focus groups. And that's also where we are heading now. If you have not indicated your preference either during the registration process or today during the discussions in the chat, please do so, and you will automatically be directed to your focus group. There are many people that indicate their preference, so it might take a few seconds before Bea has put you in the right focus group. But in worst case, you just wait in the plenary hall room, in the current room, and you indicate, and then at some point you will be directed to the focus group. Before we move to the focus group, I would briefly ask Francesco from the European Commission whether he has any remarks before we move to the focus groups.
No.
Francesco?
Hello to everybody. No, of course, no remarks. The three presentations have been excellent ones and also very involving emotionally, the three, because I noticed in all the three cases that we are not speaking only about kind of, how can I say, pure professional, but there is a high level of professionality linked with an emotional contribution that is fundamental for